Continuing on our lesson. So, the last we left off, we talked about how rich countries and poor countries, okay, and I hope by now, okay, let me just write down. So, I hope by now you know Mr. Kai's version of rich versus poor country is actually wrong. The labeling is supposed to be developed versus less developed. Because rich versus poor is only GDP, nothing else. Right, so we've already learned now DC versus LDC. There's a whole lot more baskets of indicators, which includes literacy rate, employment rate, things like that lah. So there are those few criteria, not just wealth. Okay, so now after having learned what is the difference between DC and LDC, we also talked about the reasons why what they eat is not the same. Right? That is basically the whole of the last video. Okay, so within that, we brought up a couple of things. Things such as the level of wealth, for sure, the social aspect of it. For example, the fact that less developed country, there are more birth rate. As a result, there will be greater strain on starchy staples. Globally, there's an outcome as well, which will impact more on starchy staples. Okay, we also talked about the fact that organic food, fast food, they are also affecting rich countries and poor countries differently. Currently, as well as in the future, what's going to happen to them. Okay, and finally, we also talked about political. If say in the event of a food shortage, who is best able to react and how will they react differently? Okay, or if you're talking about food quality, if there's an issue, what are the actions that a rich country can take that a poor country cannot, which results in the difference in the type of food that they eat. So now we already talked about why they are different. Let's talk about what's the outcome if they are different, right? Keep in mind, everything that we have learned about geography is all about spatial differences. Why one location is different from another, from plate tectonics, why some place got 4 mountains, some place got volcano, to weather and climate, why certain places have got high temperature, certain places got low, some got monsoon rain, some got convectional rain, why? To tourism, where we talked about the different types of attraction, to food resources, where we can talk about rich country versus poor country, again, developed country versus less developed country. And then, for all of those chapters, we also talked about causes, impacts, management. So now we are moving on into impacts. Okay, so effectively, what are the impacts of, in this case, excessive versus inadequate food consumption? So we start off with simple question. What is considered inadequate? Inadequate means insufficient. Inadequate does not mean less developed country. Right? It just means you don't eat enough. Okay, we're going to go through and we're going to realize actually rich country or poor country, both of them will have inadequate food consumption. But obviously, this will be more prominent in less developed countries. Okay? So the impact of inadequate food consumption that we will be learning is on health, economic, and political. Everything that we're going to learn falls within these 3 brackets. So, once again, let me remind you, as we talked about impacts, and we're recording down your own notes in your textbook as well, impact is always an argument of E plus L. Okay? So, effectively, if you say malnutrition, right, the E is how does inadequate food consumption cause malnutrition? The L is, because this is health, right? What is the impact on health? Okay? If say we're talking about economic, lower productivity, how does inadequate consumption lead to lower productivity? And how does lower productivity affect the economy? Same thing for political lah, right? So how does inadequate food consumption cause social unrest? And how does it affect the country politically? Okay, so E plus L. So again, everything that you're annotating within your textbook as we go through this will largely fall under the L. The E should already be within your textbook itself. So please identify, highlight, underline. Don't tell me you're going to rewrite everything that I'm going through in my slides. Okay? So, last one, sorry, social scavenging. Okay? So, we start off with malnutrition. And this is very important. Okay, well, I know we just at the very start, everything I say is going to be important. But a lot of people seem to be confusing malnutrition with starvation. I know we tend to say, oh, starvation, oh, I'm starving, man. Starvation has a different technical meaning from malnutrition. Okay? Malnutrition is not just hungry, yo. Hunger is not malnutrition. Hunger is not starvation. Hunger is you complaining. Excuse me. Okay? So the idea behind this is malnutrition. That means you don't get a specific nutrients. Is missing. And because of that, because it's not sufficient, specific, right? Also means it's not balanced. For example, say you get a whole range of vitamins except for vitamin C. You still can fall sick, right? Vitamin C can cause what? Lower immunity levels, scurvy and all that stuff, right? Maybe you have everything else except for calcium. You can be healthy and you can be healthy, got vitamin C and all that stuff. But you trip and fall, you break a bone because your bones are weak, no calcium. Each one of the nutrient has its own value, and if you don't have any one specific nutrient, already considered malnutrition. Okay, it means there's an imbalance. Okay, so it sounds mild, but the impact can be significant. Okay, so who does this affect? For example, especially less developed country, right? If you think, oh, Madrid, easy what? Nothing, right? Not that big a deal. We consider it in the scale of it. Okay, if say for example, the lack of calcium plus lack of vitamin C plus lack of vitamin A plus lack of vitamin D and whatever it is, you add them all together. 5 million children under the age of 5 in LDCs die because of malnutrition. It's not just a matter of suffer from malnutrition. That means many more will suffer from malnutrition. 5 million die yearly. Okay. Secondly, not just children of less developed country, but also old people in developed country eat too little because they cannot eat. Say for example, teeth lah, health conditions lah, doesn't allow them to digest efficiently lah, whatever it is. And now the question becomes, why is it at DC more than LDC? Right? I mean, if you cannot digest, it's not like rich people cannot digest while poor people can digest, right? What's the logic behind this? Right? It cannot be that you have higher education level, therefore your body cannot digest once you grow old. Anybody here so far? Okay, again, like I always, when I'm asking a question, try to think, can you figure out a reason before I give the answer? Okay, because the answer is life expectancy. In a rich country, we actually live, in a DC, we live significantly older. So we actually suffer more of this. In a less developed country, because they are likely to die at a younger age, they don't suffer from this as much. Okay? And last one, people with eating disorders. Right? People who have, what you call it? Eczema. No, eczema is the skin one. Bulimia. Anorexia nervosa, this kind of diseases or conditions. You may think of it as just people who choose not to eat, and those very health conscious, body image conscious. It's not lah. Some of them are legit genuine mental disorder, meaning they associate food with something and stuff like that to the extent where they cannot force themselves to eat, or they cannot eat full stop. Okay, so these are the kind of people with eating disorder, which is again prevalent in developed and less developed country. You see here, I purposely didn't write DC or LDC, but of course you know lah, maybe a bit more common in developed country because of all the globalization, mass media and all that stuff, right? So there are factors that's affecting it. Okay, so when we talk about malnutrition, the first thing that we think about, right, is skinny bodies, which, like I said, is not necessarily true. And also we seem to think mostly affecting children, which is also not necessarily true. Okay, so if you consider this kind of eating disorder, this is not considered pornographic material. This is considered actually quite safe lah. I don't know how, as in they rated the image as safe, but yeah, anyway, you can see this is eating disorder. Okay, so what's the impact of malnutrition on the life cycle of a person? You might think it affects you at that particular stage. You imagine the children one, right? It affects them when they were young. Okay, so the 5 million globally die already. There are remaining maybe 20 plus million people who just suffer from malnutrition. But how does it affect a person in the lifelong portion of it? Okay, for one, as a baby, if you are malnourished, you're going to be inadequate. You're going to have not enough nutrition, easier for you to die. Then, when you grow older as a child, you fall sick more frequently. As an adult, or rather as a young child or adolescent, you don't really pay attention in school, you don't really go to school because you're always on MC. Think of if you have any friends who are the kind, right? Not say naughty lah, like choose not to come lah, but you know, health condition wise, forbid them from actually coming to school more regularly. Right? We have a couple of cases. In the past, I'm not sure whether present there is, I don't know everybody in the Sec 4 level, but I know in the past there are some. Okay? Which means, as an adult, as also the same thing. Imagine, you're on MC a lot, right? Chances are, what kind of education level will you be able to attain? Lower. And with that, what kind of job opportunities can you attain? Lower. With that, what kind of children will you be able to raise? One with less capability to purchase food with better nutritional balance, resulting in this becoming a cycle of poverty. I know this term sounds nice, huh? In an exam setting, you need to be able to elaborate how does this cycle of poverty take place. Okay? So it starts off from a baby all the way to an adult, and it reinforces it into the next generation. Because if, say for example, an adult that's malnourished, not able to get proper work, hence not able to care for their children as well, because the income is a bit lower, same thing, they will also be less productive at work. They will be on MC a lot. Their income itself is going to be low. Okay, so it propagates itself as a cycle of poverty because education falls into play. Right? Fall sick, so education falls into play. Are we okay with this? Again, this few, they didn't die. But what happens is, it gets reinforced. For the next generation, maybe the kid might die. Or the next generations after that, the kid might die. But the idea behind this is it gets reinforced. Hard for them to break out of the poverty cycle. Okay? This is the portion where I bring you through the E plus L. Okay? Once again, E plus L means I need you to tell me how does inadequate food consumption lead to malnutrition. And L is the health outcomes. Okay? In this case, you see, right, even in your textbook, they give you, I only wrote down 3 lah, but actually technically you got a whole lot more. Please don't tell me you're going to write every single one of them. No, you need that. No, do you need to memorize every single one of them? Okay, maybe just one will do. I need to know, at the very least, if you choose to talk about calcium, it means that a person who has insufficient calcium consumption will result in weaker bones, meaning they are more prone to being injured as a health outcome, and they will also suffer from osteoporosis. This will be one relevant argument. Okay, again, if it's a 3-mark question, then you come up with another one. Malnutrition also can suffer when a person lacks vitamin A, which results in them being unable to maintain good eyesight, especially in low light, causing them to have visual impairment and blindness. Okay, so at this portion, you are already talking about health. This additional consequence, if you can bring it up, by all means, please do. It will help to reinforce the cycle of poverty. But even without, your argument is already complete. Importantly, if you only talk about this, this is not health impact. Health impact is here. Okay? Next one, as we talk about starvation. Now this is the portion where a lot of people say they're starving, right? Actually, that's a really bad use of the term, because starvation is an extreme form of malnutrition. What happens is your body starts to shut down because of lack of food consumption. You imagine your kidney starts to fail, your liver starts to fail, your lungs stop being able to operate, your heart eventually will stop. Then you die. That is literal starvation. Of course, there are stages, but what we feel in Singapore will never come close to this. Okay? The impact on health is, it results in organs shutting down. So the E and the L is all here, resulting in, of course, death lah. Okay? So why is it more common in LDC? Because, number one, more people living in poverty. Okay? Lack or absence of resource to recover from natural disasters, and unstable political situation. Again, these are factors that's causing LDC more common than DC. Keep in mind, it's everything that we learned already, right? Why the difference in food consumption between DC and LDC? Okay? So health, settle. Easy? Nothing too difficult, I imagine. Okay? How malnutrition occurs, how starvation occurs, and the health outcome for each one of them. So malnutrition is a health problem. Starvation, of course, is health. Health in the sense that you die. Okay? Then we talk about the rest. Now that we are familiar with the structure, the rest of it will be fairly straightforward. Because if, say, for example, lower productivity, this is the E. As people fall ill, they don't report to work as often. Okay, what I want you to do is, I want you to consider, pause here first. I want you to think and annotate on your textbook the 3 different ways it can affect at an individual level, at a company level, and at a national level, country level. What is the link? The 3 different ways you can argue them. Economic, Pause here first. I want you to actually think about this. I would like to give you a place for you to type, but I know in the end, if you just continue watching, you just retype what I said. So that's why I don't see the point. I want you to try and do this first. Okay, I hope you managed to. Let's take a look at how it can affect a person differently. At an individual level, that means people spend more on healthcare. No. Lower productivity, they don't report to work as often. People earn less. As lower productive hours, hence lower disposable income. Yeah, an expression we are already familiar with, this idea of disposable income. We learnt in tourism. At a company level, what happens is there will be higher healthcare costs, healthcare insurance costs to pay for employees. Okay, you imagine if I were to fall sick, a big portion of my medical bill is actually paid for by MOE. You can ask any of your parents. If they fall sick, their employers will pay a certain portion of it. So I want you to project what will happen to the company if so many of their employees fall sick. Okay, company will be at a loss. Okay, they may not even choose to invest in a particular country, knowing that the health is such a big problem, and they're going to end up paying so much when it comes to healthcare costs. Okay, national-wise is more resources on healthcare, less on economic development. Right? Imagine this: if so many people in the country is sick, the country will have to spend money to build up their hospital infrastructure more so. Then in the end, there's less money spent on economic development. Okay, hence it becomes an economic impact. So again, 3 different ways for you to argue. If you're asking me which one is most important, I would say hand to heart, it depends on the question. Because I've seen before, or I've tested before, how does inadequate food consumption affect at individual and national scales? Right? 3-mark question. This one, individual and national, right? Not company, right? So I say, because of high healthcare costs to pay for employees, company at a loss, therefore companies choose not to invest in a country. So it becomes a country problem, right? Yeah? So depends on how you choose to argue. Again, the L, you see the weight is a bit more on your ability to elaborate, to highlight the economic nature of the issue. Okay? Lower productivity, how does that, so this is the E portion, how do you end up with lower productivity? No food, no nutrients, fall sick more often, absent from work, no income, family gets affected. Ayo, happens again, it's happening again. Less goods produced. So this one is at individual level, this one is at company level. Different, right? See, this company level is different, right? Yeah. So again, the L is not fixed. It depends on how you choose to argue it. The important one that I want to highlight to you is the scales that it can be affected. Okay, higher healthcare costs, as we talked about just now, higher expenditure because there's greater demand for health services. So, when more money is spent on healthcare, less spent on other sectors, causing an economic impact. Okay? Yeah, so we already talked about the different scales. Yeah, the example being provided is the last one is this idea of long-term debt due to food and financial aid. So have you ever wondered, right? If say for example a country suffer from inadequate food, say kena climate change lah, whatever lah, so not enough food suddenly for the country. Then you see all the other countries, they are rushing in to provide help. The thing is, yeah, and this analogy people seem to have a hard time trying to figure out. Okay, so I'll try to explain to you a bit slower. Feel free to rewind again, but pay close attention to this. The thing is, you can imagine, Malaysia suddenly kena hit by something. Then Thailand has got food that they can offer to Malaysia. Okay, it's ASEAN, right? So they have some kind of agreement in the event of an emergency. We should help one another out, blah 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 blah. Sure. So Malaysia would otherwise buy or produce its rice and buy the rice from its own local farmer at maybe 5 cents. But in Thailand, the rice is better quality. Each rice is being sold at per gram maybe 10 cents. Twice the amount. If say for example Malaysia suddenly all its rice supply kena wiped out, maybe kena monsoon heavy rain or whatever, then Thailand decides to, I come to the rescue. Come, I give you this 25 million bags of rice. But it's 25 million bags of rice at 10 cents each. 10 cents per gram. Which means Malaysia is effectively going to owe them money. Right? Because it's not the amount of food that they would otherwise be able to consume. Thailand, if you're wondering, but Thailand gave the food what? There's not really an issue what? The thing is, Thailand may have given the food, but do the Thai government actually have the right to give away the locals' money? Right, that 10 cents per gram, that is local taxpayer money in Thailand. They cannot just anyhow go, okay, never mind, this is the new president, I feel very generous, like take, everything just take. Doesn't work that way. Okay, how does it work? They have to give and then must take back the money. Maybe not immediate because they are facing an emergency after all. Maybe they'll give it at a discount, but they still have to recover some of the money. Maybe within after 10 years without interest, whatever it is, they have to recover some of it because that tax money is not the government's to just give away for free. It's more of they can give to help, but they must get it back to support the country. Okay? So I want you to imagine, especially in the context of global aid by USA, can you imagine that? American food, how much more expensive is it going to cost? And then they give away, during emergency, they pass their food, extra food supply to all these countries during an emergency. So they need to claw back the money, right? That means people now owe money in the sense of how much the cost of food if it was to be bought in America, not in their own home country. Okay, for example, this can result in it being up to 34% more expensive, right? Which is significant lah. Imagine if you're a less developed country, how long will you be able to pay? Chances are very long, right? Hence long-term debt. Okay? And that is the economic one. Straightforward, right? Not enough food means you cannot have, not productive. Not enough food means country must spend more on healthcare. Not enough food means you owe people money because you have to get food from other countries as an emergency. Last two, short ones. Okay, social unrest. How does inadequate food consumption lead to social unrest? Okay, when people are unhappy about the political system. What about the political system makes them unhappy? How do you get unhappy because of inadequate food consumption? Keep in mind, we already covered this in the previous video. Pause here for you to consider. Okay, reason why is because people count on the government to ensure quantity and quality of food. Right? If the quantity is not enough, remember we talked about the food price suddenly increase, not enough demand because we not enough something that they can afford. So people get upset at the government by not being able to control the price of the food. So what happens is they riot. Imagine in Singapore, if say for example chicken, we have been buying from Malaysia, right? If suddenly Malaysia decides to stop, then Singapore government just throws its hand in the air and surrender. That's it lah. Singapore, let's just not eat chicken. Then all the chicken fanatics is going to go crazy, right? McDonald's, the McSpicy, all you cannot eat, you go nuts, right? The chicken McNuggets and that's it, right? Can you imagine Bertin going through a day without chicken McNuggets? So what's going to happen? Bertin will flip table and protest against the government. Same goes for the rest of the country, resulting in political unrest. Okay? Because they count on the government to be able to do something. Hence, that's why when Malaysia decides to stop, it came out in the news a lot that Singapore is sourcing from Indonesia, from Turkey, from wherever it is. I mean, which news is going to bother talking about, oh, the country managed to find eggs from this country? It's like not that big a deal. But it becomes a big deal when the government is trying to tell the people that, yeah, check it out, we're doing something for you. Okay, so don't worry, don't panic, don't do a social unrest. Okay? Example, when there's in 2010, there's the drought in Russia that caused the wheat production to drop, causing the price to increase by 30%. Again, Mozambique in Africa, less developed country, not able to afford it. What happened? They started to protest, and the protest got violent, 10 people died. Right? Ironic, right? They want food, they went to protest. Because of that, they died. But that's what's happening in less developed country. Okay? And then we move on finally into the last one. So you already know health, straightforward. Economic, money. Political, government, relationship between government and its people. Last one is social, which is a way of life. I think you see the word scavenging alone, it should be fairly straightforward for you. What this means is, if you imagine this, okay, I don't know when I'll play the whole video, but that is a that's a ram and that's a mouse. Just now was cigarette butt amongst the food. Look at what they're doing, huh? Okay, so I'm just going to pause here. It's a pretty long video, but you can see what's happening in the Philippines. Effectively, they cannot afford to find food, right? There's inadequate food consumption. What happens is they start to scavenge from the rubbish dump. Yes, they try their best to clean it, but I mean, of course, there's only so much things that you can do by cleaning it in hot water, right? So there will be some diseases here and there. And importantly, this is a social impact, not health impact. What do you think is going to be the problem in the way of life? How will they suffer in their day-to-day life? That's not health related. If you are, say for example, a friend of yours, you find out it's actually scavenging for food as opposed to buying their own food. How do you think that will affect that class of society of people? Okay, the main problem that they will suffer from would be discrimination. Okay, so for sure, there's health risk, right? Whatever it is that you're eating, bacteria, chemicals, it's dangerous. It may go into illegal places, and when it's illegal, this is social, this is health, by the way. Okay, perceived as a nuisance, receive verbal and physical harassment, that's also social. Okay, this one being considered as a discrimination, is a link, sorry. Discrimination. This one is crime. Alright, so you can see that the outcomes are going to be quite dire for them. One factor, two arguments so far. This one can be a health one. So if, say for example, you're talking about health impact, not enough points to write, you can talk about how scavenging can also affect health. Okay. Oh, I just remembered something. Your senior ever did this once before. Health. Alright? Because people who scavenge tend to fall sick easily because they're being exposed to all this. People are avoiding them. Fear that they will spread disease. Something like discrimination, but a different argument. Right? It's not that they are unwanted in society, perceived as a nuisance. This time round is fear. Right? So, different kind of arguments. Okay? So, you can see so far, these are the problems relating to inadequate food consumption, where there is not enough food. Thereafter, then what's the problem if, say, okay lah, we just spam them food, right? In developed countries, for example, we don't suffer from this. Does that mean we are worry-free? Of course not. If you were to imagine this, remember okay, I don't know whether you can see this. This is gluttony as an image. Okay, the yin and the yang. Can you see the yin is how big? The yang is how small? Yeah. This idea of excessive food consumption is also in itself a problem. Okay, impacts also within the same within the similar few domains, except there is no political impact. Okay, so I want you to imagine, why no political impact? Why we cannot blame the government when there's too much food for us to eat? Maybe that can be a question that I want you guys to do for a checkout activity. But in the meantime, I want you to look through what other problems. You can see here, very few, not much left. Okay, when it comes to health, similarly, we have obesity, diabetes. Okay, it's not a matter of malnutrition and starvation, rather obesity and diabetes. How to argue? Exactly the same way. E plus L. How does excessive food consumption lead to obesity? What is the problem with obesity? Okay, for example, okay, this statistics 30% of the world is overweight. You can see here, rich countries. Okay, in terms of developing countries itself, which country? Developing country, we have Brazil, we have India, China, South Africa. These are the richest amongst the less developed country. Yeah, so when this happens, you can see over time it's actually growing how much of our country is, our rich countries are being overweight. Why do you think we introduce things like Tough Club in schools? Right, the running program and all that stuff, because we know there's a problem. Okay, so obesity, this is the definition of it. The question is how to use this as an argument. Okay, overconsumption resulting in excessive fat accumulation. This is the E, causing obesity. What's the problem with having obesity? Health problems such as high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes. This is one argument. Again, remember, this is an argument. You may need to be able to come up with multiple. Okay, excessive food consumption of other things can cause kidney failure. So, you see lah, right? There are more than one ways for you to argue. Just like inadequate vitamin D, not the same argument as inadequate calcium. Excessive food consumption for fats lead to this. Excessive food consumption for salt lead to this. Yeah, so different kinds of like malnutrition kind of argument, right? That's it for your argument for obesity. The reason why I'm just pushing through, because it's very short. Okay, when it comes to lower productivity, see here, right? The economic one. These two, lower productivity, higher healthcare costs. Look similar? It's because it's exactly the same. Right? The only difference here is what's the reason for it. While in LDC or in inadequate food consumption, our argument is you don't eat, so you fall sick regularly, malnutrition, and because of that you don't go to work, therefore lower productivity, country needs to spend more on healthcare, therefore higher healthcare costs. In developed country or excessive food consumption context, it's the same thing, right? You eat too much, resulting in obesity related health problems, therefore you are not able to go to work, resulting in lower productivity. At the same time, the country needs to dedicate more money on healthcare costs to make sure that they are supported, therefore less economic development. Exactly the same argument, no difference. Do I even have slides to go through them, or I just say like that? I do have slides. Okay, sorry, I forgot. I did this quite a while ago. Yeah, excessive food, fall sick more often, absent from work, no income, family affected, less goods produced. I realized I used the exact same slide, just that I changed the top one. See? Argument similar. Okay? Same thing here, higher healthcare costs. And that's that. Okay, the more important one is to talk about the difference when it comes to social. Again, the question will be posed to you. I decided already. So the activity will be, what is the political kind of why excessive food consumption are political? Ask you to think about inadequate and put in the context of excessive. Okay, for social, again, it's about way of life. Here, there is not as much scavenging, but when it comes to excessive food consumption, the problem that arises from it is food wastage and diets. So what are these problems specifically? Okay, take a look at this short video.
Ugly fruits and vegetables are the 20% of fruits and vegetables that are grown on farms that don't make it to supermarkets each year. And that's usually for small cosmetic reasons like too big, it's too small, or it's the wrong shape, size.
Okay, 20% of agricultural outputs is actually not being put to supermarkets because of how they look, because people won't buy them. So can you imagine what's going to happen to them? Right? Obviously, this will be about food wastage. Okay, the ugly carrot, the disfigured eggplant, the hideous orange. What's going to happen is it could be thrown away. Okay? Take a look at this. This becomes a problem because of the amount of waste that we throw away. The waste of resources, not enough land, the loss of value of food, people taking food for granted. This is the social outcome. Okay, I want you to keep in mind. If say, for example, insufficient land for development, what type of outcome is this? Okay, I hope you can figure out this is economic. Okay, this is just statistics above here for you. Okay, people taking food for granted. You imagine the amount of food that you throw away when you eat, especially in the context of knowing there are countries out there with inadequate food consumption. You just imagine during recess time when you order the food. Do you clean your plate? Are there excess food that you're throwing away? And why? Right? So these are the things that is an impact of excessive food consumption. Being able to, you don't feel that hungry because you eat more than enough, right? Yeah. So last one is talking about dieting. Now dieting as a social impact. Why do you think dieting happens to begin with? Excessive food consumption, right? So what? Then just go for healthcare. Does healthcare cost what? We are a developed country, right? Can afford it. Okay, the reason behind this is, again, discrimination. Okay, there is the social aspect of it. And additionally, people who diet, they are also divided by class. You imagine all those kinds of the detox liquid, don't know what that you must drink, all that stuff. All those are only if you can afford it. Therefore, it becomes a social class differentiator. Therefore, a social impact. Okay? Take a look. These are some of the problems relating to dieting. Okay? And as a matter of fact, actually there is even an E+, an economic E+, when it comes to impact of excessive food consumption, where we can start off a brand new dieting industry. But this dieting industry capitalizes on people who would otherwise suffer from things like depression arising from excessive food consumption. Okay, so you can see here there are certain things that may look similar, but of course the argument still need to make sure it's a bit different. The L may look exactly the same, but the E is different. How excessive food consumption causes this one, how inadequate food consumption causes this one. Okay, so this is what we have learned so far as a quick summary for you to be able to view all in one shot. Make sure that as you read through this, look through them and go, oh yeah, okay, I know exactly how to explain them. This is to be able to explain why DC versus LDC is different. This is to be able to explain the impact, which is the E plus L. Okay, that's it for my short video. Maybe not that short, but either ways, please make sure you've annotated what you need to. There will be a checkout activity within Google Classroom itself. See you guys, happy HBL day.